Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. In today's video we are at Tweseldown in our first ever intermediate novice, which I was very excited for, more than nervous, which I was quite surprised by as there was a lot to jump in this day and the dressage test was a little bit more complicated than our usual one. In this test we scored a 34.1, which I was very pleased with, and coming out of the test that is sort of ballpark of what I thought the test was. I did not really ask for the medium trots or the medium canters. As you can see, he is a little bit tense and a little bit overexcited as there were lots of aeroplanes flying over throughout our dressage, warm-up and our test, and he just wasn't too keen on that. So his frame is a little bit tense, a little bit stiff throughout the back, which is the general comment from the judge, which I totally agree with, but our second medium trot was much better than our first. But throughout this test I was sort of just keeping his excitement contained. He does relax into the frame a little later on into the test, and going into this shoulder in I thought he did really well. This is his worst side. He finds this side quite tricky, and the comments for both of my shoulder ins were he just needs a bit more of the correct bend, which again I agree with. And onto our walk, which I was a little bit disappointed with. You'll see our free walk on a long rein in a minute, which is half a 20-metre circle. He just did not stretch. He was sort of looking around. He had a nice rhythm throughout his steps, but again, I didn't want him to jog or anything, but he does not stretch down or relax at all, which was a little bit annoying and definitely could have got some more points through that movement. And again, just keeping him focused on the job ahead and not on other horses in the background, and then preparing him for our half a 10-metre circle onto the centre line, and then getting him ready to prepare for a walk to canter transition, making sure it's not too early or too late, and keeping his frame as relaxed as I could on this day. And he did a really smooth upwards transition and we scored a 7 for that. I was very pleased with his canter work, but as I said earlier, I did not ask for the medium canter, which is now on the 20-metre circle. He was just very overexcited, and in the warm-up I practiced medium canter to working canter and I couldn't quite get him back. And in this test, as you can see, I needed to do counter canter and I didn't want to mess that up. I wanted him to stay on the correct leg and listen, so I thought it was better to jeopardize the medium canter rather than getting a horrible counter canter. And then I had to prepare for a simple change, which I thought he did a really good job on that one. For a few strides of walk, I think we were allowed 3 to 5 steps and then proceed onto the left canter lead. And again, didn't ask for the medium canter and just kept him concentrating and focused and preparing for our counter canter on this rein, which, if I remember correctly, I think sadly he spooked at something, and he did really well to keep the counter canter, but that did therefore make our downwards simple change there. He just kind of spooked, I don't really know, and he then distracted and I was a little bit late on the simple change and therefore resulted in a slightly tense upwards canter transition, and we scored a 6.5 for that, which was fine. And then our final canter, trying to keep his haunches and shoulders aligned in the straight down the centre line, trot at X and then halt at G. But in general, I was really pleased with this test and I'm pleased that nothing went terribly wrong, and was really relieved. And welcome back to another video. Ruff and I are here at Tweseldown doing our first intermediate novice, and we've just done the dressage, and he was quite sharp and quite tense, but he did do a good test. And he's just had a walk around and he's actually was quite desperate for a wee, so that was really good of him to hold that in for the test. But I think the test in general was alright. There was no major mistakes. In our last canter to walk transition, he spooked in the counter canter a little bit, so I'll be interested to see the mark for that, because our first walk to canter was much better than our second. I didn't really kick him on for the medium canter, so I'm sure we've scored quite low for that. Because I wanted to balance him in time for the counter canter and then our canter to walk transitions. And then our medium trots, the second one was a bit better than the first one. The first one he took a little while to understand my aids, but we did do 2 medium trots, and then our halts I was quite happy with. This time they were on the centre line. And yeah, in general I thought he was quite rideable. There was aeroplanes going over the top of us, so he was a bit wary of the aeroplanes, but he was a really good boy, kept his concentration, and now we're going to walk cross country and the show jumping. And on to our show jumping round, which is always my least favourite part of my eventing day. I just get very overstressed and nervous and anxious about my show jumping round for whatever reason, but Ruffian jumped a brilliant clear for me today. At Tweseldown, he was amazing. I put him in a new bit, which is a bomber's bit 2-ring gag with a happy mouth tongue piece, and he jumped really well in it. He was really relaxed through his neck and frame, which therefore allowed him to jump a lot more free, but still allowed me to have some control and not let him rush through into the fences too much. It's a very fine balance with Ruff. He's a really keen jumper and sometimes gets a little bit headstrong, but he seemed to jump really well in this bit, and I really attacked the course. I really wanted to clear round because I'd been practicing so hard on my show jumping, and then coming round to the final combination, which is a treble, and I got a super jump in, and I just sat nice and quiet and let him jump, and I was so pleased with that clear. Right, Ruffian and I just jumped clear in the show jumping, which I was so relieved about, so pleased with. He jumped really well. The new bit definitely helped. I wasn't as firm with my aids. It allowed him to stretch and relax into our round, whereas before I think he was just tense and a bit angry. But yeah, really looking forward to the cross country. There's lots to jump, lots of late combinations on the course that are causing a few problems today, but yeah, fingers crossed that we get home safe and sound. Right, and now on to Ruffian's favourite part of the day, which is the cross country. He was raring to go in the warm-up and super keen coming out the start box, as you can see, jumping over the first few fences, easy peasy. And as the course progressed, my brakes and control definitely lacked, but he was amazing and jumped through the flags, and we were very much easily inside the time. And yeah, very pleased with him. Ruff and I have just finished our cross country and we went clear inside the time, be it a little bit quick. He was very out of control halfway round, but he really enjoyed himself and he's cooled down really well. I think we're top 10 currently, which is great. Didn't really have any expectations for today, especially given our last run. He was a very good boy. He's now got his ice boots on and he's just having a little something to eat before we pack up and go. But overall, really impressed, especially for both our first intermediate novices. Couldn't expect a better run. Lots to work on, obviously. Very good boy in the show jumping with his new bit. It's just a 2-ring gag. It allowed for him to relax into the round rather than being all tense with me being all nervous, because show jumping is my least favourite. And then we both had an absolute blast around the cross country, especially with some really tricky combinations. But yes, Ruffian and I actually finished 6th in our first intermediate novice, which I was so proud of. But thank you all so much for watching and stay tuned for the next vlog.